Hey coders, welcome to another video in this real estate series. We have already completed our front end page or the landing page. Now we are moving on to the rent and buy pages. Both are same, so if we define one, we have already defined another one. Okay, so in this page we have this search bar, which is the main task that we have to do, and the other main task that we have to do is this sort by drop down menu. Other than that, we have already defined these cards, and we will only just copy paste this heading. Sorry, the header or the menu bar and this footer. The project that we are building, we have given this footer the background color blue, which matches the buttons, these ones. But in the demo project, this is the color of the footer. So we are going to keep this color, the blue one. Okay. So for that, we have to create separate HTML pages. So let's start with that. Okay, so let's create two pages. Let's give them name rent.html. And let's create another page, buy.html. So what we are going to do is that we are going to copy everything from index.html, control all, copy, and let's start with rent, okay, and paste everything over here. Now we are going to delete everything other than, which comes basically in between the header and the footer. So basically all the sections. We are not interested in any sections at all. We will create our own separate sections for this page. Okay, so this is the last section. Let's delete it. Now this is all we have. I've already put in this buy.html and rent.html. So let's refresh, and now let's click on the buy one. Okay, we haven't put anything in the buy. We are putting everything in the rent to rent. Now if you notice, you can see this blue shade over here. This is because this is actually the footer. And remember, we gave blue color to the footer, so this footer is actually behind the header. Now you have to figure out why this footer is behind the header. Well, the reason this footer is behind the header is, if you remember, we have given the position fixed to our header. So when we give position fixed to any HTML element, if you think of browser as having different layers, so initially any browser or web page has only one layer. And all the contents that we have defined in the HTML file, they are all placed in that layer one after the other in the sequence. But when we define position fixed, then that element will also create a separate layer in the browser. So by setting position fixed, we have actually created another layer. So now there are two layers in the browser. The first one has this header element as its very first child, and the second one has element footer as its first child. So because both of these elements are first children in their respective layers, so they are trying to occupy space with this top left position of the browser because they think they are the very first children in the browser, even though they are in different layers. But once we put some content between the header and the footer, the header will get pushed down. So we don't have to do anything to fix this problem. This problem has occurred because currently we don't have anything in terms of the body of this web page. So let's define some content for this body of the web page. So let's go down. So before we define anything, let's have a peek at what we have in the web page. Okay, let's go to the demo project. Now if you notice, so first we will create a section, and within that section we will have a div which will contain this search bar. Then we will create another div which will contain this H2, this drop down list, and the third div will contain all of these cards. So let's get to it. Okay, so where the header ends, let's create a section and give it a class name properties. Now create a search div. Now this will contain our search form. Then let's create a container. Now within the body of this container, first of all we have to define H2, and let's define the title, current properties in the market, or let's make it current properties to let. Okay. Then the second child is our sort div. So let's create a div with the class name sort div. This will contain the drop down menu. And the third div is going to be the div which contains all the cards. So if we go to our index.html, so this is the name. Basically we will copy paste everything from here. So container, listing container, a div with the class name listing container. Then within that div we have separate cards with the class name listing. So copy listing 2, copy listing 3, copy, and this is the last div. Copy, and let's place it over here. Okay, So a section with the class name properties, then we have a search div, then we have a div with the class name container, which contains first child h2, second is a sort div, and the third one is called listing container with all the listings in here. Okay, that's it. Let's have a peek in the browser. So this is the one that we are working on. Now if you notice that blue shade is gone because now the footer has been pushed down over here. However, some contents of this section has been moved up. As a result, they are behind this header. So that's because now this section is the first child of the layer in which these contents are present. So they are also starting from this top left corner of the browser. But we will fix that part. Let's put in the search form and the drop down list. So let's start with our search div over here. Let's create a form with the class name search form. So we need one input element for the postcode, bedrooms. This is input of type number. This is input of type number as well. And this is also input of type number. So one input of type text and then 3 inputs of type number and then this submit button. Input type text over here. So the name is going to be, let's give it location. We don't need ID. However, we do need placeholder. So location or postcode. Now input of type number. Let's change this to placeholder and copy paste it 2 more times. Okay. For the first one, let's give it the name bedrooms and placeholder bedrooms as well. For the second one, let's make it minimum value is 1. So that means bedrooms can't be 0. Now for the second one, let's give it the name minval and placeholder is going to be minimum value. And now let's define a step. So what this step is going to be, let's put in 1. Let me show you what this step does. Okay, so this is our demo project. Now, as we hover over these number elements, you notice this up and down arrows. So when we click on it, each time this one decreases 0.01, increases 0.1, and this one will make it decrease 0.01. So by defining a value for the step, we are defining how much this number should increase or decrease with each step or with each click. So over here it's 0.01. We are making it 1. Okay. Now for the second one, give it the name max value, maxval, and placeholder is going to be max value. Now let's define input of type submit, or shall we make it button? The reason I'm going for the button is that then we have already defined certain properties for the buttons, so we will just copy paste those values. We could do this with input as well, but let's be consistent. Okay, so value is going to be search. Let's make it capital. Okay, we still can't see the form because it's still behind the header. So what we are going to do is that let's go to our style files, and this is the footer. After the footer, buy and rent pages start. Section name is properties. Let's for the time being give it padding top. Let's make it 8 rem. This is temporary. We might have to change it. We will think about that later, but for the time being this is temporary solution because we want these elements to be pushed down. Properties. Okay, so there it is. Now we are able to see the search bar. Okay, now let's work on the sort div. So let's go down to the sort div over here. Let's define select. We don't need to give it any class because we don't have any other select element in the rest of the website. So let's give it the name sort, and ID, we don't need any ID. Okay, now let's define option elements for each of the options. So let's copy paste it 3 more times because we have 4 sort by options. For the value, let's start with the captions. So let's start with price, low to high, copy, paste, high to low. Now for the second one, it's bedrooms. Again, let's make it low to high, bedrooms, high to low. Now for the values, let's make it price underscore ascending, price underscore descending, bed underscore ascending, bed underscore descending. Let's put back C. Okay, so these are the values. Now let's have a peek in the browser. Okay, so this is our drop down list, but we need this sort by title as well. Okay, so we need a span dot sort title. Okay, so the name or the caption is going to be sort by. Okay, that's good. Okay, and with this we have basically defined the whole HTML structure. Now we have to work on styling this page. Let's start with the background. Then we will be able to see the Glassmorphic effect, which is not visible over here for these cards and this the header. So let's start with it. So let's go to our style.css and let's start with the content. Yeah, sure, why not? Okay, so let's copy this contents of this content section and paste it over here. So the image is sky.jpg. Do we need display flex, justify content? Yeah, sure, why not? Okay, so now because flex direction by default is row, so that's why this is how you see we have to change the flex direction from default to column. So flex direction is going to be column, and let's put in a gap. Then we will not have to worry about placing the headings or margins between the children of the properties section. So we have 2 children in the properties. By 2 I mean 2 immediate children. So we have this search div and the container. So basically we have to think of how much space we want between the search div and the container. So this is search div and the rest of the contents are container. So let's start with the gap of 2 rems. So gap, let's make it 2 rem. Maybe we can do away with a little bit more gap between this search div and this whole container. And and I've also noticed I have written mim value. We have to change it to min value. Okay, so gap, let's make it 3 rems and let's go to the rend.html file and over here change it to min value. Okay. Yeah, I think for the time being that's fine. Okay. Now, as you can notice, this 8 rem of padding top 8 rem is a lot. So let's make it 4 rem. Oh, actually, because we have said justify content, align item center as well. So we have to change it to justify content, change it to flex start. So this will bring the contents to the top with respect to the vertical axis. Oh, okay, that's good. Now we need to bring back padding top of 8, the initial value. Because I thought this margin padding was pushing the elements down, but in fact it was just this justify content center. Okay, that's better. Okay, so now let's start working on our actual search form. So because this is a form, so what we are going to do is that we are going to copy the styles that we have defined for the, let's open it over here. So let me copy this, paste it over here. And let's go to the home. Okay, so remember I clicked on home, but it just attached this hash hero to it. So what we are going to do is that we have to bring in the whole address. We will eventually change this when we define our backend, but for the time being, what we are going to do is that let's go to our rent, and over here, instead of this hero, let's delete it and paste this thing for the home. And let's copy this part, paste it over here. So okay, so this is hrem, so this will reload the whole page. Okay, so now what this will do is that if we are on the rent or buy page and we click on about, then it will not only reload the page, but it will scroll down to the about section as well. We don't need to put in index.html because that's the default web page for any web server which is rendering the page. Okay, so let's remove this. Now let's test. Let's click on the about. Now we have been moved to index.html and about page. Let's click on home and we are on home. Again, let's go back to the rent and now click on home and we have been moved to this hero section. Okay, so let's recap. When we had not prepended the domain name with the sections, the section name, these are, so this hash followed by something is called a section name. So if we have not defined this domain part, then what happens is that whichever page we are currently on, like over here we are on rent.html page, had we clicked on, let's suppose, services, so it would have only appended hash services to it. And because there is no section with the ID services, so we would not see any change over here. So rather what we wanted was, when we clicked on the services, we wanted to be redirected back to index.html and then we scroll down to services section. So for that, what we had to do was, we had to prepend it with domain name. This whole thing is called domain name. It doesn't include index.html. So when we don't define any file, just the domain, so the server which is rendering the page will by default consider the name of the web page to be index.html. So this took us to index.html and then scroll down to the featured section. But for these buy and rent, because they are not index.html, so we have to provide the actual path to the page. So /buy.html or /rent.html. Okay. Eventually we will replace this with the proper domain name when we have defined our backend as well. So basically when we are working with the PHP. But for the time being, this is how it works. Okay, so now we can copy this part and update our index.html as well as the buy.html. But let's not worry about it because this is temporary anyway. We will eventually change this setting as well. So let's keep it the way it is. Now let's move on to what were we doing. Okay, so now we have to work on the styling the search form. So let's go to so this is landing page. Now let's go to the contact us. Now if you notice, this is our contact us form. So what we are going to do is that the styles that we have defined for this contact us form, we are going to copy paste it. And then we will think of what changes do we need to do. So let's go to the style and let's go to the contact section. Let's search for it. It's okay. Okay, so we are going to copy everything related to the contact form. Copy. Now let's go down to the properties and over here let's paste back everything. Okay, now first of all, the name of the form in our case is search form. Display flex direction, column, justify content center, align item center. Okay, and the gap between the input elements is 1.5 frame. Then the immediate children of search form. Height 8, width 100%, padding 1 frame, border radius 0.4, border none, outline none, font size 1.6 frame, box shadow, text transform. Okay, now we don't have any text area, so let's delete this part. Then contact form of type, input type, button, background, this okay. We need a cursor, okay, fine. Yeah, let's see how it looks. Let's go to rent. Okay, so this is how it looks. We don't need flex direction column, so let's delete it. And why hasn't this one got the color? Oh, we need to change the name from contact form to search form. Okay, over here as well. And while we are at it, let's change the flex direction from column back to default. Since it's default, we don't need to define it. Okay, so this is how it looks. Now we have to see how does it look responsively. So let's start with the screen size is 1200 pixels. Okay, so this is 1200 and I think we don't need to make any changes for the 1200. Let's check 768. Okay, so for the 768, what we want is that, let's see the demo project first. Okay, so this is demo project, and if you notice, we have only 2 input elements per row. To make that happen, what we are going to do is that we are going to shrink the size of input elements to 50% of the size of the parent. So this way, we will be able to fit in 2 input elements per row, I think. Okay, so what we are going to do is that we are going to copy this whole thing because we have to decrease the font size as well. So copy this and let's take it down to the 768. This is we are on. Okay, so this is 480. So this is the end of 768. Paste it over here. We are not changing the height. Or shall we change the height? Let's change the height from 8 to 7, I think. Width is going to be 50, or let's make it 45% because we have to put in the gap as well. Okay, so width is 45%, padding already has 1 rem. Font size, we will decrease the font size to 1.2 rem. And let's delete this as well because we are not making changes to any of those properties, so we deleted them. So basically, those properties still apply to 768 screen sizes. Because this is our demo project. No effect. Oh, we have to define flex wrap property so that if the content doesn't fit in on a single row, they must get down to the next row. So let's go to the global properties over here for the container which contains the search form. So basically the whole form. For that, let's define flex wrap over here and set it to wrap. Okay, good, that's it. Maybe we should shrink the width from 45% to 40 because they look too big. Or shall we increase the gap over here? And we should make the height back to 8% because it doesn't look nice. So let's go back down. Change it back to 8%. And font size, let's make it 1.4. Yeah, I think this is better. Okay, so this is 760. Now let's check how do they look with 480. Fine, I don't think we need to make any changes. Yeah, okay, fine. With this, we are done with the search bar. Now let's move on to the title. What happened to you? Oh, okay, my bad. So let's go back where we are defining the flex wrap to wrap. Okay, so what we are going to do is that we don't have to define this flex wrap for the global property. So copy and delete this wrap property from here. And since I have copied the whole part, let's go back to 768. Over here, paste it. Let's delete the rest of the properties except for the flex wrap. Good, now it's fine. Okay, so for 1200 and greater, we see all of them in a single row, but when we reach 768, this is how we see our search form. Okay. Now, as far as the current properties to let is considered, the font size is quite big. So let's go to the global properties. Okay. Properties, and we have H2 there. Define the font size. What is the generic H2 font size? It's 3.5. So we are going to turn it into 4.5. Font size 4.5. Okay, that's better. Maybe we should put in some gap between. Okay, there is a lot of gap over here. So we have to increase the gap between the children of the properties section. Okay, so the gap over here is 3 rem. Let's make it 4 rem in the properties section, for the properties section. Okay, that's enough. Now the rest of the gap will come between this H2 and this container, which is called listings container. So let's give some gap for the. Okay, so we have container in the properties section. Okay, so we have container div within which we have this H2 drop down and listings container. So we are going to define some margin for this H2 over here. Okay, so properties H2, let's give it margin bottom and let's make it 4 rem. I think that's better. Now let's work on, or let's see how it looks responsibly. Let's start with 1200. It's fine. 768. I think we should decrease the font size back to 3.5. Other than that, okay, so properties H2, copy. Let's go to 768. Paste it over here again, or let's make it just 4 rem. 3.5 will be a lot less. And for the margin bottom, 3.5. Okay, that's better. 480. Let's decrease the font size over here. Copy. Paste it over here, and the font size, let's make it 3.5 rem and margin bottom 3 rem. Yeah, I think this is better. Now let's move on to the drop down list. Now the first thing that we have to do is that we have to move this sort by from the left side to over here to the right side in the right edge. So since this H2 drop down list and this div which contains all of these cards, properties cards, they are all inside a div called container. So all of these are the children of the container. So we will define display flex for it, justify content properties and align item center in general. But then we will come to this child and we will change its alignment from left to right explicitly, but only for this particular child. So let's go again to defining global properties. Okay, so over here we are working with the properties. We have a div named container. For that, let's set display flex, justify content center, align item center. Let's define a gap between the children. That reminds me, we have to set the flex direction to column. And gap is going to be, the reason we are defining gap is then we don't have to worry about setting margins and paddings. So gap is going to be, let's make it 1.5 frame and see. Okay, so maybe we should increase the gap. And because we have defined some padding margin for this H2, so this gives us more gap, but maybe we are fine with that. Yeah, I think we are fine. Okay, let's increase the gap over here to 2 rem, and over here margin bottom, let's make it 2 rem as well. Okay, now this is in the center, we have to move it in the right side. So for that we have another property. Let's, in fact, what we are going to do is that because this class name is very unique, so let's directly target sort div. We don't need to prepend it with these ones because we don't have any other sort div class name. So this is a unique class name. So sort div, and we are going to target this align self. So this will only align or change the alignment for this particular child of the flex. So we are going to set it flex end. Put it in the corner of the flexed end. Okay, good. Now let's give it some height, padding, font size and everything. Okay, so within the sort div, we have select statement. Okay, let's increase the height by increasing the padding. So padding, let's make it 1 rem all around. Then font size 1.2 rem. Line height, let's make it 1.5 rem. Okay, that's better. Text transform, capitalize. For the color, okay, we need to give it some round edges, and so for that, what we are going to do is that copy this border radius, border, outline, and what else? Copy. Paste it over here. Okay, so this is how it looks. I don't think the font size has increased, has it? Let's make it 1.4 rem. Okay. Okay, so now we have to target this sort by. So sort div, and there we have span. Let's copy everything. These except for the border radius and outline, because we don't have these things. It's a span. So padding, so let's make it padding right and 0.8 rem. Font size 1.4 rem, line height 1.5. Let's give it font weight so that it's bolder. Okay, now, okay, so this is how it looks. Do you think we should increase the font size? Let's make it 1.8 rem, then line height, make it 2 rem. Yeah, I think this is better. Okay, now let's see how it looks responsively. Okay, so this is 1200, 400, this is 480. Let's start with 1200. Okay, for the 1200, everything seems to be just fine. Now let's move on to 768. Okay, so 768, it seems to be misaligned with respect to these cards. So what shall we do? If we give some margin to this sort div, it will push this whole div towards the right if we define margin right. Okay, so let's go down to 768. Over here, sort div, let's define margin right. Let's start with 2 rem. We need to increase the margin right. Shall we make it 3 rem? Okay, I think this is perfect. However, if you notice, because of the background image, this sort by is not as much visible. So to fix this, what we are going to do is that we are going to give it text shadow, and the text shadow is going to be white. So this way, this text will always be visible no matter what kind of background there is. So what we are going to do is that, okay, instead of going and looking for it, let's search text shadow. Okay, so this is the text shadow. Copy this, and again let's go back down to the sort div. Okay, so properties, search, container, sort div, span. Okay, over here let's paste in text shadow. However, the color is going to be white in our case. So copy, paste, paste, and paste. Okay, good. So now it's visible. Let's check 1200. That's good. And if we go a bit bigger than 1200, it's fine. Now let's check 480. So for the 480, maybe we should bring this self-alignment property back to center. This way it will be in the center, and then we don't have to think about margin. We will have to reset the margin back to 0. Okay, so let's go to 480. Sort div, margin right, let's bring it back to 0. So we change the margin right to 3 rems, 3 rems for 760. But for 480, we are removing basically that margin right because we are setting its self-align property, align self property back to center. Yeah. There is something not quite right. Maybe we should increase the size of this card for 480. How many cards we are able to see for 768? Two are fine. But for 480, if we are seeing just one card, so at least the size of the card should be a bit bigger. So let's increase the card size. So because cards are in the listing, so let's go and check the listings. This is header listing. And where is listing container? Okay, let's copy this part for the listings, copy, and let's go to 480. This is 480. So after the nav links, let's paste in and put back the ending curly bracket. Okay, so width, what we are going to do is that we are going to make it, let's see, 80% of viewport width because it's VW. Oh, that's horrible. How about 75%? We should increase the height. Maybe this will change the height. Let's make it 60% of the viewport height. Okay, this is fine, but I think we should now decrease this space over here. So for the H2 in the properties, let's remove the margin bottom that we have assigned to it. So for the 408, sort div H2 margin bottom, let's make it 1 rem. Okay, that's better. So now we have a lot of space over here. So either we can put some space over here, that will be too much work. So what we are going to do is that we are basically going to shrink the width, and we will, with respect to that, we will shrink the height as well. This will bring everything in order. So listing width, let's make it 70, and height, let's make it 55. I can live with that. Okay, so with this, we are done with the buy and rent pages. So basically, this is rent page. We basically have to copy everything and put it in the buy page as well. And the only thing that we have to do is that if it's rent, then all of these lines should be, these strips should be red. And if it's buy, then all of these strips should be green. But since currently we have everything defined manually and statically, once we have our backend in place, so this thing will be taken care of automatically. We will not have to worry about it for the time being. So with this, we are ending our today's video, and in the next one, we will work on, when we click on any of these cards, we get redirected to this details page for this specific property. And over here, we have this slider as well, which shows all the images associated with this specific property. So in the next one, we will work on this particular part. In the meantime, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please do not forget to comment, like, subscribe, and share. You have no idea how much this means to me. Thank you so much. Happy coding!